This program contains coarse language.
Good morning, how you going? He's an enigma. He's an individual. Let me tell you, they broke the mould when Clive was made.
What you've got is this really complex character who's both brilliant and stupid almost at the same time.
I mean, as far as he's concerned, it's a benign dictatorship. You know, it's like, it's my way or the highway.
Go on, Clive, come on, yeah, that's it.
I think he's crazy. I think he's quite mad.
Welcome to Four Corners. Those are just some of the views you'll hear in tonight's programme on Clive Palmer. Bully, dictator, control freak are a few more from those who've seen the capricious businessman turned politician up close. For 3 decades, Palmer's record of blurring the lines between his business and political interests has seen him frequently mired in controversy. But it's the recent collapse of his Queensland Nickel refinery, with the loss of over 700 jobs, that's seen the most damage to his reputation and which seems likely to drive him out of politics at the next election. His role at the refinery as the business was faltering is being investigated by ASIC and the administrators. Tonight, reporter Hayden Cooper traces Clive Palmer's spectacular rise and fall from political favour. And for the record, Palmer refused to take part in this story, demanding a live interview on his terms, which we couldn't accommodate.
Thanks for joining us. Well, it's happened again today. For the umpteenth time, the National Party government awoke to find the morning papers touting yet another apparent scandal.
Brisbane, 1986. A scene that now feels eerily familiar.
This time the man in the hot seat was Clive Palmer, the National Party's media director.
A brash young entrepreneur is caught out mixing business with politics.
More cronyism or not? Mr Palmer is in our studio with Kerry Lonergan.
Well, Mr Palmer, the clear innuendo is there. Are you indeed a crook?
Well, nobody's made that allegation, as you'll appreciate. I'm very surprised at these sorts of allegations. This happened in 1983. It was public knowledge. It was gazetted in the Government Gazette.
I won't let you down, you people.
These were the days of Queensland Premier Joh Bjelke-Petersen and his National Party government riddled with cronyism and weakened by scandal.
All the best, thank you.
This was a very murky period. This was a period of brown paper bags in the National Party. It's not a very proud time in Queensland history, sadly.
I found it a very funny period of Australian politics. And some of the boys, you know, no doubt should have seen a bit of jail time in that period.
Shouldn't you give the game away now?
This is the first round, let me say that. Why don't you give the game away?
Clive Palmer and Sir Joh Bjelke-Petersen were close, and Clive learnt his politics from Joh. That is, the assertive, in-your-face, aggressive, let everybody know exactly what you stand for and don't ever pull back.
A young Clive Palmer was the National Party spokesman. Not for the last time he was accused of a conflict of interest. His plan to build 60 townhouses on the Sunshine Coast had been rejected by the local council before the notorious Minister Russ Hinds intervened in Palmer's favour.
But you're a crony, aren't you?
Certainly not. I mean, what is a crony? Are you a crony?
Well,
this is a lot of allegations that the Liberal Party throws about because they're desperate.
It's pretty remarkable, though, isn't it? That the council decision was overturned by the Minister, Mr Hinds, in 8 days.
Certainly not. Your information is completely wrong.
Did you speak personally with Mr Hinds?
There was no personal meetings with me and Mr Hinds that I can recall.
That you can recall?
No.
This was unfortunately a perception in the community based on fact. That is, that there were deals to be done by developers with government. If you had the government on side, you could get your development through.
If you or anyone else believes there's something wrong with our company or how we approach this matter, the matter is very clear. They can complain to the Ombudsman, they can complain to the police, they can commence civil action. No one will do that. Why won't they do it? Because it's just gutter politics that the Liberal Party embarks upon because they're desperate.
Clive Palmer, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I think you...
Amid the controversy, Palmer shelved the project for more than a decade. This episode is emblematic of the Clive Palmer Australia would later come to know. A man who hovers unashamedly in the grey area between business and politics. He would eventually take the battle to build his apartments all the way to the High Court, proving Palmer's unrelenting pursuit of a dollar, his famous litigious streak, and willingness to use political connections to further his interests. 30 years on, Palmer's competing interests between business and politics may finally bring him undone.
I think one of the mistakes that Clive has made since he got elected as a federal member of parliament is he has actually blended and confused business with politics. And I think that in the end is going to be his demise.
I think that he saw his political involvement as an opportunity to also advance his business interests. His star has shot up and it's flamed out and it's coming down to earth in a very rapid rate. People are now seeing the true Clive Palmer, in my view.
As his business empire falters and his political career flatlines, Clive Frederick Palmer is being unmasked by those who worked for him and with him. Business associates, political colleagues, employees and opponents. Have you ever worked with someone quite like Clive Palmer?
No, he's an enigma. He's an individual, let me tell you. They broke the mould when Clive was made.
What you've got is this really complex character who's both brilliant and stupid almost at the same time.
I mean, as far as he's concerned, it's a benign dictatorship. You know, it's like, it's my way or the highway.
Oh, I think he's impossible to work with. And, I think, Clive's not short on ego.
I think he's crazy. I think he's quite mad.
Business Review Weekly had put me as the wealthiest Australian in 2009. And I'm continually put on different lists, but I've never said anything, How much wealth a person has is immaterial, It's the content of your character that matters and the things you stand for.
Four Corners is on the trail of Clive Palmer, charting his rise from Gold Coast property salesman to political provocateur. First stop is the state where he sealed his biggest deal, Western Australia. At the start of a new millennium, Palmer's iron ore reserves bought in the 80s had been sitting idle. But there was fast money to be made, and Clive Palmer needed an investor to turn his deposits into cash.
Clive was very enthusiastic and, he flew me in the helicopter and all the VIP stuff to try and impress me.
Palmer spied a potential partner to mine his resource in veteran businessman George Jones.
Subsequently, he then started talking about the deal he wanted to do before providing us with any data. And so that made it difficult. In the end, he did make some data available to us that led us to do a proper assessment of it, and we felt it was worthless.
Worthless?
Worthless.
Why?
The grade of the ore was very low. Its location without any infrastructure, completely devoid of any infrastructure, and the type of ore that it was. At the time, the iron ore price was increasing, but nowhere near the levels necessary to make it worth anything. So it was, in our assessment at Portman, it was worthless.
For his mineral deposit, Palmer wanted $50 million in cash and a controlling share of Jones's company, Portman Iron Ore.
We didn't ever get that in writing because it was so far out of touch with reality that it didn't go any further. And Clive's demeanour changes as the deal changes, and as it moved towards it not looking very good for him, he started ratcheting up, and towards the end he got quite aggressive and rude.
Now retired, this is the first time Jones has spoken about what it's like negotiating with Clive Palmer.
I've found from my own dealings with him that anything he tells you, you have to be very careful with it to assess it. That's my own experience. And he's very affable and friendly when he wants something, but he turned very nasty when he doesn't get it.
Palmer's next move revealed a measure of the man's audacity. Refusing to take no for an answer, he went to China and found a willing buyer. The state-owned CITIC Pacific Mining, a company eager to find a foothold in Australia. Palmer's stubborn pursuit of a jackpot paid off.
So they paid Clive Palmer $450 million for the right to mine 2 billion tonnes of magnetite. And also part of the deal was that CITIC was going to build the whole plant and pay for it. And that ultimately turned out to cost about $12 billion. So in terms of value, this was one of the biggest deals done by China globally.
We all thought at the time it was an extraordinary achievement by Clive. I mean, he had a slice of luck there, and good luck to him.
Clive Palmer's influence skyrocketed. In Perth, politicians and industry players took notice as the big-talking Queenslander emerged from the shadows. Clive Brown saw the two sides of Palmer when Minister for State Development.
Well, Clive will use every tactic in the book. He's very, very acute, and he will, if necessary, be quite strong with you. He will come along and potentially threaten legal action if he's not getting his way. But equally, if he is getting his way and things are going, then he'll praise you. He'll seek to make you feel like you're the best person in the world because you're doing a great thing. I guess when you find someone is like that, I guess you always deal with them a little warily. So you can be jocular, you can have a laugh, but always in the back of your mind is this person can come and snap at you pretty quickly if they think you've left yourself a bit vulnerable.
The Chinese spent a fortune building the mine, but they soon clashed in court with their business partner over how to calculate royalties. In a message left for a CITIC executive, Clive Palmer's anger was unleashed.
Just to recap with you, we are not changing the royalty rate for you at all. Tell your gentleman to stick it up his ass, okay? So you tell your chairman to stick it up his ass, you people give me the shits. And if you continue not to play it away, I'm going to throw you off completely and close your project down. I'm chairman of this fucking company. I don't want to bring up little shits like you because you won't pay your bloody rate to play your rent. I've had enough of this. So pack up all your fucking gear and get back to China.
When there is a souring of relations between internal parties, and it can happen and does happen, and when it's in such a public way, and when it is with significant players, one in Australia and one in China, these sorts of disputes are not good.
You're not the judge.
Palmer launched an extraordinary public attack.
We've had 3 judgments in the Federal Court and the Supreme Court of Western Australia and an arbitration against these Chinese mongrels. I'm saying that's because they're communists, because they shoot their own people, they haven't got a justice system, and they want to take over this country. And we're not going to let them do it.
He should sit back and enjoy his luck, not treat them the way he appears to have treated them, frustrated them at every turn.
CITIC Pacific Mining is still trying to turn a profit in the Pilbara. Palmer, though, is not going empty-handed. Some royalties are flowing despite the court battle.
Clive Palmer himself is receiving a royalty right now and will continue to receive a royalty over the life of the project, which could amount to more than $600 million.
This toxic dispute gives a clear view of the classic Palmer approach: crash or crash through. His Chinese investors are now out to destroy him unless he destroys them first. It reveals two recurring themes of Palmer's life: a tendency to fall out with colleagues and a bloody-minded determination to always get his way.
Unfortunately, I'm not a very talented footballer, but at least I can enjoy the game. That's the whole thing about soccer. Everyone can enjoy the game, everyone can participate. There's no overt violence on the pitch. People are not against each other, and people can respect each other for the skills that they can demonstrate. And that's what we want to build in the community. People that respect each other rather than to look at violent solutions to difficult times in their lives.
Cashed up and back on home turf on the Gold Coast, Clive Palmer set about creating a public persona. What better way than to buy a football team?
We'll be trying to win the A-League in the first year of the competition. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in the competition.
Palmer appointed Israeli-Australian Miron Bleiberg as the inaugural coach of Gold Coast United.
Clive, typical to Clive. It took him about 2-3 months to understand that football is played 11 against 11. That's how basic was his knowledge about the game. And after 3-4 months, he was already thought that he invented the game. So.
And there's Clive Palmer doing the team talk because things are going well all of a sudden on the Gold Coast. They lead.
Things weren't going well for long. After 3 years in the league, Bleiberg was dumped as coach. His mistake? Objecting when Palmer installed a 17-year-old as captain in his debut match, a play for a headline.
I would say like this, that as far as you are in his camp and you serve his purposes, so he will give you loyalty, he will protect you, he will do anything for you, more than a normal employer. But the moment there is no need for you, whether he had 3 pilots and he sold 1 aeroplane, so he need only 2, all right. Or whether you're going to close the soccer team and he doesn't need his coach, you're out of the door. So let's put it like this, loyalty there, but no sentiments.
Clive Palmer's abrasive personality would get him and his club kicked out of the league, a result of his constant sniping at the sports bosses.
Why don't we have a right of free speech in this country? I mean, this is a real joke if we're going to try to stop debate on these issues because they upset someone in the FFA.
Looking back, Bleiberg thinks Palmer had achieved what he wanted, a national profile.
What Clive did, and very smart for him, he knows that Australia is a sport fanatic, so basically move from the back page to the front page, you know, from the sport pages to the political pages.
What is driving Clive Palmer?
I think he's driven by a number of things. I think he's driven by ego. I think he's driven by the profit motive. He wants to be successful in business, and he's driven by power. I think Clive would love to have been the Prime Minister.
The reason I'm standing for federal parliament is I'm standing to be the next Prime Minister of Australia. I've made enough money in my life. I'm not seeking any enrichment or wealth for myself. I'm seeking it for the Australian people. I could go off and stay in Monaco, have a nice drink and forget about this country. But we've got more commitment to Australia, to your children, than anyone else.
Looking up at Parliament House, it's impossible to imagine Clive Palmer in charge. He's been accused of delusions of grandeur.
If you go to Clive's house, you know, clearly he has some vaunting ambitions. He's got a lot of John F. Kennedy stuff, but there's a lot of other stuff there that indicates hubris, you know, I mean, association with great figures, you know, in history.
Palmer's move into politics wasn't just about ego, it was also driven by revenge. Queensland state election, March 2012. Then a life member and big donor, Palmer is thrilled when his Liberal National Party is swept into power.
I sat on a panel with him on Channel 9 on election night when the Bligh government was defeated, and Clive was ecstatic. So clearly he had invested a lot of money and emotional energy, and he was a very strong supporter of Campbell Newman.
These democracy's alive. No longer will favours be given. Freedom reigns in Queensland, and Campbell Newman is the head of that freedom. I'd do anything for the Liberal National Party because I love it. He knows, all Queenslanders know, that I love Campbell Newman. I love his family. I admire his wife. We've got a great treasurer in Tim Nichols.
Well, I think Paul Keating said always back a horse called self-interest because you know it's trying, and in Clive Palmer's interest, it's trying very hard.
Palmer's self-interest in this case was a business deal that could make him millions of dollars. His coal reserves in Queensland's Galilee Basin. When the LNP formed government, he was hoping to secure a lucrative rail deal to transport coal to the port. Then Queensland Treasurer Tim Nichols was briefed by a cabinet colleague on Palmer's lobbying efforts.
The story was that he turned up with legislation that he had had his lawyers draft that would have facilitated his project, and we rejected that out of hand. It seemed that he was expecting special favours or special treatment. The reasons why he might expect that, I don't know, but certainly he seemed to be saying, I need or I want some special favours because I am a supporter of the LNP, and that was clearly not going to be the case. We were supported by many people in 2012.
The new cabinet gave the railway contract instead to Palmer's competitors. He was furious and viciously turned against the Newman government.
These books have been cooked by the biggest crooks that have ever occupied office in the state of Queensland. These people are detestable.
Well, from that time onwards, our relationship became more and more strained with Mr. Palmer. It wasn't on the basis that we particularly wanted to have that relationship deteriorate, but it certainly was the basis that we were not prepared to do special favours. We wanted, again, that clear, open and transparent process.
In fact, he did set out to destroy them and played a significant role along the way, particularly in the regions, in doing just that.
Palmer took his campaign against the Liberal Party national. He was determined to remove two key impediments to his businesses, the carbon tax and the mining tax.
Go on, Clive, come on, yeah, that's it, baby!
Oh, he's doing it! That's the man that should be running the country.
Oh, yeah.
He can twerk.
If you can't twerk, you can't be Prime Minister.
You just got the young vote in one move.
His campaign antics worked, and his money helped.
Good morning, how you going?
He spent millions of dollars on his election.
There was this roguish Australian appeal initially. That's why he won, and a number of his senators for the Palmer United Party got elected, because he was this roguish Australian character. But then after a while, it all started to taint.
Senator Glenn Lazarus has bad memories of his time at Palmer United.
There was no consultation. It was Clive's way or the highway.
And how would he take it if you questioned his judgment?
Oh, he would rant and rave. In fact, I saw that quite a bit with him. He would remind us very quickly that we knew nothing about politics because we'd only just arrived in politics, and that he'd had 40 years' experience, and that he knew that what was best for Palmer United. He didn't react kindly or nicely, but he certainly reacted.
The party leader micromanaged his senators, controlling who they could meet and how they could vote.
Yeah, that was the case for sure. I would ring and say, "Oh, you know, why would this minister want to see? Oh, don't worry, don't see them. I'll take care of it," and then we'd move on. You know,
he wouldn't let you have your own meetings with ministers.
No.
It was Eric Abetz's job to wrangle Clive Palmer and his senators.
Clive Palmer is clearly a maverick, but with respect also quite erratic. You never know when he's on side or not on side. It's bad for public policy making and very difficult to deal with a gentleman whose deals are not his deals until the actual vote is counted. So trusting his word I found exceptionally difficult.
For Lazarus, the verbal abuse became too much. The final straw was the sacking of his wife as a volunteer with the Palmer party.
He's got to go, he's needed in the chamber.
It was certainly having an effect on me, both emotionally and I guess as a politician.
Do you feel that you were bullied by Clive Palmer?
Yeah, at times. I mean, I'm a pretty big guy. I took it on the chin, but when I saw him bully people that couldn't defend themselves or came up with good suggestions and they were handed down because, you know, they hadn't been in politics for 40 years like Clive liked to tell us. I did see him doing that to people I thought that he should have had a little more respect for, and you know, including my staff and my wife and his staff. You know, sometimes I was very embarrassed about the situation.
Morning, Clive.
Morning, everyone.
Clive Palmer ridicules this claim.
Well, how could you bully Senator Lazarus? You know, I've seen him play State of Origin. He didn't take any bullying from the Queensland Forwards.
Yeah, well, bullying can be seen in a lot of different ways. I would much rather him physically try to bully me than verbally. The fact was that I felt I was fairly vulnerable because I was very, very new to this career, and I was relying on Clive to give me guidance and to steer me in the right direction. But at the end of the day, when people had suggestions and ideas which I thought were good ideas, he just wouldn't listen. At the end of the day, if you're continually berated and I guess yelled at, that it's got to be a form of bullying, and it was just something I couldn't tolerate for a long period of time.
He's a person who can be, at any one time, everything from quite funny and in some ways rather endearingly charming to being quite repulsive and pig-headed, stubborn and sometimes intolerable.
Alex Douglas was the Queensland leader of the Palmer United Party before he too quit.
You'd really have to say that the sum of the negatives in this case is so great that any good that was done was undone by all the harm that was done.
Why do you think people are scared about speaking out against Clive Palmer?
Oh, well, I think he's got a pretty good reputation of wanting to sue everybody. He puts it down as one of his hobbies. So, I just think that at the end of the day, once you've severed ties with Clive, you don't want to have him dragged back into your life like I'm doing at the moment, being interviewed by you.
Clive, more than 200 families are really hurting right now after you sacked them from Queensland Nickel. You're a very rich man. You've boasted it. You've boasted about being a very rich man for a very long time.
It's not true. 22,000
so Clive,
people
if you've done so much good work, why do you think Australia thinks you are a joke at the moment?
I don't think they do.
Nowhere is the Palmer brand more tarnished than in North Queensland, where a key part of the politician's business portfolio has struck trouble. It's here in Townsville that the link between Clive Palmer's investments and his political ambition has truly crystallised, where the Palmer story comes full circle. When he bought the Queensland Nickel refinery in 2009, he was a local hero. Now he's become a figure of open derision, as the truth about Queensland Nickel, the ATM of the Palmer empire and political machine, is laid bare.
If Clive Palmer came today and he was on fire, I don't think anyone would cross the street to spit on him to put it out. That's the feeling that you get in our community today. It is a crude way of putting it, but it is one of the nicest things that have been said about him in conversations that I have had around this city.
Initially, Palmer was a popular boss known for his largesse, splurging on luxury cars and 700 holidays to Fiji for his workers. But by this visit in 2011, the mood was shifting.
We've got a strong commitment from me, we've got a strong commitment for all of our team in WA that whatever happens with the nickel price, that we'll be keeping this operation open for the long term. So I think we don't have anything long term to worry about.
His prediction was wrong. The perfect storm arrived late last year when the nickel price plummeted. By March, more than 700 workers had been sacked. Administrators are now combing through the books of Queensland Nickel to find out what went wrong.
Are you then completely blameless in these job cuts? There's nothing you could have done to prevent them?
It's mathematics. You see, the nickel price at the moment is $3.75. 90% of the world production cost is above that, and that's how it is. You can't do much about that, really.
The price of nickel is not an excuse here. It is one factor in running a company. Now, with Queensland Nickel management has not sufficiently prepared for the downturn in this, that is not the price. That is not the fault of the price of nickel. That is a historical fact and something for which you should be very aware.
Okay.
Sean Bramwell is coming to terms with being sacked. He's owed $60,000 in redundancy payments.
Yeah, it's true what you said. It sort of came pretty much hit straight away that they sort of didn't have a job and didn't have any backup money or kick-on money to go with, basically.
How long had you worked there for?
Oh, 8.5 years.
I think Mr. Palmer has got a lot to answer for, and sometimes I wonder how he can actually sleep at night, because the families, whether they're a single worker or with a family, they all come from a family, they're all affected.
Across town, Union Delegate Sam Larkins is contemplating a move interstate after also losing her job.
It was devastating for a lot of people. I think a lot of us were in shock for days before it really hit us, yeah.
Well, you can see in the distance the Queensland Nickel refinery, owned of course by Clive Palmer. I'd love to take you further, but we've been told in no uncertain terms that this is the limit, that over there is Clive Palmer's private property and this is not. And I've got to tell you that his security team has been guarding that private property quite zealously. The vital question here is who was really in charge when Queensland Nickel was heading for financial ruin.
And of course I retired from the operations in 2013, went to federal parliament.
That's not the way the workers remember it.
Everyone knew that everything that happened out there was with Clive's full knowledge, and you know, his management style became very evident at about the 3 or 4 year mark.
So when he says that he had retired from business, what do you think?
Rubbish. Yeah, he's just talking shit. Every purchase order over $500 for the last 3 or 4 years went across his desk. Everyone knew that, everyone.
But it is important that we all get together and all commit to work hard.
Clive Palmer used the email alias Terry Smith to direct staff and approve expenditure over the course of several years.
Well, as I go across the country, all over Australia, I use a whole lot of different emails from a whole lot of different people. But the real situation on all of that saga is I am one of 6 people who were a member of the expenditure committee of the refinery who would approve capital expenditure, much like a bank or a shareholder would. Now, that's surprising, considering I'm the only shareholder of the company. There are no other shareholders. It doesn't have any bank debt. So it's quite normal that you take that sort of a role, and that's what I did do.
Why do you use an alias, if you like, of Terry Smith?
Well, I don't use an alias of Terry Smith. That was somebody's email that I would have used that day to approve something.
On Sky News, he later changed his story.
So I've got an email in Terry Smith that I normally use to communicate with my family members.
Fresh evidence obtained by Four Corners identifies his extensive involvement, giving approval from his Terry Smith email account for a range of spending, everything from a finance support system to a $6 million mining agreement and an $8 million haulage deal, all while not a director. Another email shows Palmer knocking back a request for a routine inspection of an oil pipeline. He ignores advice that such a move would be risky and instructs staff to delay the tests. Former workers have a range of complaints about safety and environment.
There's a lot of dodgy stuff that's been going on out there, especially in the last 3 or 4 years. We've got huge concerns about the safety of the workers out there and the state of the plant and the environmental stuff. There's been a lot of stuff going on out there that really should be investigated.
ASIC is already examining whether Clive Palmer was operating as a shadow director and therefore could be held liable.
A shadow or de facto director has the core duties that apply to properly appointed directors. Those duties apply to the shadow or de facto director. Now, in summary, these are fundamental duties. They include, for example, the duty not to have your company trade while it's insolvent, the duty to act with reasonable care and diligence in all your decision making, and also the duty to act in the best interests of the company.
The appointed director of Queensland Nickel was Palmer's nephew, Clive Mensink. Four Corners found him at Townsville Airport not long before the refinery was closed.
Is it Mr. Mensink?
Yeah.
How's things going at the refinery? Do
You have to talk to the administrators.
Will it survive?
You have to talk to the administrators.
But you run the place, right? I just want to get your opinion.
Well, just talk to the administrators.
You don't have
That's
any
all
words.
we've always to say.
Have any words to say for the workers?
Just do their jobs.
Has Clive Palmer been running that place?
Talk to the administrators.
Because it looks as though he's been a shadow director.
Well, that's your opinion in the media, no one else's.
Would you disagree?
Of course I do.
But the documents suggest otherwise.
There's no documents for you to refer to.
There's a lot of documents.
I don't think so.
A lot of documents suggesting that he is a shadow director.
As I said, you need to talk to the administrators.
You get his approval on spending?
You let them do their reports.
You've been getting his approval on spending for a long time, haven't you?
It's not going on with this anymore.
If it turns out that a court finds that Clive Palmer is in fact a shadow director, and basically Clive Mensink then is allowing Clive Palmer to be the director, make the key decisions, the important question is, was Clive Mensink satisfying his duty to act with reasonable care and diligence by allowing another person to really be the director of Queensland Nickel?
Questions are also being asked about donations worth more than $20 million made from Queensland Nickel to Clive Palmer's political party over the past 2 financial years. Palmer has claimed the donations were in lieu of a dividend and were made when the company was in good health. But workers are unimpressed.
Yeah, just absolutely disgusted and appalled. Just couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe that he'd waste that sort of money on his own political ambitions.
Four Corners can also reveal a string of payments made by Queensland Nickel to other Palmer entities and interests. The recipients include his company Mineralogy, his Coolum resort, more than $700,000 paid last year to his favourite foreign think tank, the Club of Madrid, and $220,000 to a political advertising firm. It's not clear if any of the money was repaid.
How can he get away with this? I mean, the amount of money that he made out of that place, and especially with how much he's beaten his chest over the last few years about how much money he's got. Where's the money, Clive?
And how much are you owed?
$60,000. You know, it's a lot of money, and it'd help me get on with my life. Instead, you know, we're all stuck. What can you do?
He's got no empathy. I mean, he pretends to have empathy for his political career, but he just doesn't care about people. You know, basically, he's basically just a turd, I suppose.
The grey area between business and politics for Clive Palmer is now, I think, politically a tragedy for him, because Queensland Nickel has poisoned the water, and it's poisoned his perception as a person. It's ruined that image of a rugged, rough sort of Aussie who speaks the truth straight down the line. It's ruined that Aussie character, and it's seen him as just a businessman who's let this business go down. Now, whether that's fair or not's beside the point. That's the perception. It's poisoned the well.
I'm elected to do my best as a member for Fairfax. I represent them without fear or favour. What sort of a country would we have if there wasn't Palm United? And that's why everyone's jumping on me.
It's here on Queensland's Sunshine Coast that Clive Palmer could well be facing political extinction. In the seat of Fairfax, which he won by a mere 53 votes, the very name of the local member generates some strong reactions.
I think he's a bully. I think he's arrogant. He just annoys me. He thinks that money talks, and he can just, because I've got the most money, then I win.
He's just so arrogant even on TV. He can't wait to take his microphone out and walk off. That's just him, you know? Just such a control freak.
And if it's the end of Clive Palmer, what do you think about that?
Great. Bring it on.
Coolum Resort, owned by Clive Palmer, was once a thriving business. Now it's abandoned. Fairways are untouched, the reception is empty, and staff are gone. Even Palmer's eccentric dinosaur exhibits have been pulled down. The decline of the resort is a huge local issue.
Well, he's been the detriment to this town. We thought it was going to be great, but it wasn't. He's cost probably every business in town at least 25% of what, you know, we used to have, the PGA and all the little buses coming to town, the jobs that were lost. No. And he's just not a nice man at all.
Do you see much of him?
No, thank God. No.
Clive Palmer has little chance of re-election this year. His polling has collapsed. He thinks it's a conspiracy.
And of course, you know who writes the Galaxy poll, don't you? Rupert Murdoch from New York. He writes it, he texts it, he sends it across and says, no, don't let anyone know I've done it, you know. He said originally he had me at no % in the Galaxy poll, and his editor from the Courier Mail had to ring him back and say, look, they won't believe no %. We'll have to put something in there. He said, all right, we'll put in 1.
In Clive Palmer's wake lies a trail of broken relationships, legal disputes, sacked workers and angry constituents, from here on the Sunshine Coast to Townsville, WA and Canberra.
People have finally realised that you need more than just a flash car and a plane that you no longer own to be able to represent people effectively in Parliament and be part of an effective team.
His political career may be on the brink, but in true Palmer fashion, he'll be back.
This is not the last you'll see of Clive Palmer. While Clive Palmer's got breath in his body, he's going to be larger than life on the political landscape and the business landscape of Australia. The only time you'll see the end of Clive Palmer in terms of Australian business is when he exits this planet.
The final report from the administrators on Palmer's nickel business and his role in its collapse is expected tomorrow. You can also see a statement from Clive Palmer on our website. Next week, in the wake of the terror attacks in Brussels and Paris, we'll bring you a special report on the Islamic State terror network in Europe. See you then.